All right, welcome to, I think, our fourth data portal lunch break with the CCH2. We're going to talk about creating and editing checklists today in CCH2. So there are a lot of ways to do this. And so I'm going to talk about kind of first just walking us through what a checklist looks like. So an existing already made one. And then we're going to talk about how you can make checklists from specimens and how you can make checklists from an existing list that you have. So there are, two major ways that you can create checklists, and that's using the specimen data in CCH2. Or if you have a checklist already, like a checklist of a county or a checklist of all native plants of California, you can make those checklists by just importing the names straight into CCH2. All right, so here I am on the CCH2 web page, and you can create checklists for yourself, or you can access public checklists. You can also create public checklists that other people can see. If you want to go see the checklists that have already been made, you can go up to this checklists tab right here. And then you can see that some have already been made in the categories of California state parks, county floras, local floras, etc. So I'm going to just open up one random one here, and this is what it looks like. It has the title, it has some details if there are other details given to it, and then it will have a list of all of the taxa in that checklist. And there are a couple of ways that you can change how you are going to view this checklists. So you can also add notes, taxon authors, common names, synonyms. So you can make these very robust or very wordy, depending on what you want. You can also use display as images, which is kind of nice because then you can have a little handy dandy field guide. It's more handy dandy when you have more field images in the portal, which CCH2 currently doesn't have a whole lot of field images, but some other Symbiota portals do have a lot more field and living organism pictures in the portal. And we can talk about that at a different data portal lunch break. So you can just kind of fiddle with things that exist. If you are an editor, you can edit this checklist with a number of tools up here in the top right, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So let's talk about how we can create checklists from specimens. So first, I'm going to show you how to do a really quick checklist that is not saved. It's just a way that you can get a number of species either in a particular area or according to other search terms. So if I go back into CCH2 and I go to search collections, let's just say that I want to find anything that lives in San Luis Obispo County. So I just enter my search terms. So I'm just going to say San Luis Obispo County. I could put the country and state and province and county, but if you've used searching databases for very long, you know that the more search terms you use, the more likely you are to accidentally exclude things that were maybe like USA instead of United States or U.S. instead of United States. So I'm just going to say San Luis Obispo County. I don't think there's more than one. And then I'm just going to do a search. This might take a little while because there are a lot of specimens in San Luis Obispo County. Here we go. And I can go over to this tab called Species List. And it's going to generate a species list of all of the species that were in that result. So that way you don't have to download that's a scientific name and then or a list of all the specimens and then edit it in an Excel. You can do that right there. And then you can choose which taxonomic thesaurus you're looking at. I think this is just all of the species, all of the names that you'll ever find. And then I think if you change this, it will also resolve synonyms, but I could be wrong. Oh, now there are more. I don't know why that is. So if you wanted to view this as a checklist, if you go up to this little tab icon right here, it says Open in Checklist Explorer interface. And then you'll view it as a checklist. And so the same tools that you had available in the main checklist creation and editing, you have right here. However, this is not a saved checklist. So this right here will not be saved anywhere in particular. If you wanted to save this checklist, we're going to go through another way of doing that from a different search capability. But an alternative is you could just say, I'm going to go down here and download the checklist as a CSV file, or you could download it by printing it into a browser or what have you. And then there is an option to create a checklist by batch uploading scientific names. So if you wanted to do it that way, you're just like, yeah, I already have my list and I just want a way of creating a checklist that I can save and edit later. Then you could do that by downloading this checklist and uploading it. Okay, so if you want to be able to do a savable search and checklist, then you'll want to go through My Profile. So once you're logged in, you go to My Profile. And then on the very first page, it will say Species Checklists, and then you'll be able to see all the checklists assigned to your account. If you want to create a new one, you click over on this green plus sign. Let's say I want a checklist for the Laguna Lake area. You can add any other information that you want. You know, if this is for a specific study, you could put the abstract there, citation. You could also put the Latin long. You can create a Latin long by clicking the globe icon. Let's just say I want general Latin long at Laguna Lake Park, which is right here. Or you don't have to put that in, it's fine. You could also create a polygon. And then there are some display settings that you can use too. So default display settings. You can always edit them once you're in the checklist, you know, view as images, view as a list, but this is the will define what the default view is. And then here is where you can also define whether it's a private or a public checklist. So checklist, a private checklist is not viewable by anyone else unless you specifically give them a link. Public checklists are viewable for everyone. So I'm just going to create a private checklist. And all it is kind of a shell right now. But if we want to add species, there are two main ways. So there's from a search right here in the checklist editor. And then we're also going to be talking about how you can add species if you already kind of have a list that you just want to populate. So first, if I wanted to add taxa from specimens, you would go up into this manage linked vouchers. At least this is how I do it. And then you want to create a search statement. So this is kind of the equivalent to what we did before where we had some search statements, but these are only based on locality. So let's say that I want to do a bounding box. I'm going to click this icon over here. Whoops. And if I wanted to make a polygon around Laguna Lake Park. Oops, I think I'm gonna have to close this out because I made a funky polygon at first. If you need to clear it, I believe, well, I thought that you could change it from here. There we go. Okay, once you finish it, then we'll replace it. So if I want Laguna Lake Park, let's just say I'm going to do right here. Let's include this Madonna mountain bit. Oh, wow, my polygon is really going off the rails. Let's start over. All right, so there is an advantage to doing a polygon because then it's very specific, but there's also a disadvantage, and that is because you're only going to get specimens that have been georeferenced and georeferenced fairly accurately, at least in this case. So I think if I was going to do this, I would actually recommend just putting the county and a locality string, so Laguna Lake. And this is not some search terms that you will have forever and you cannot change. You can do multiple searches in this. You just have to go back and edit your search terms. If you want to try, Laguna Lake with just LK, or maybe spelled a little differently, or maybe with or without county. So this is just kind of your initial search, and you can do as many as you want to find other taxa that may be under different search terms. So I'm just going to save these search terms. And there are a number of tools you can use in here, but what I'm going to show you is just how we're going to add species to this checklist. To do that, I'm going to go into this Missing Taxa tab. And what this tab will tell me is all of the taxa that may be missing from my checklist because they matched my search terms, but are not in my checklist. And I believe it will only show you 400 at a time, or maybe it's just, let's see. Oh no, it does. There's just 400 species there apparently. So to add these to your checklist, you want to go over to display mode and go to batch linking. And this tool can be used to either add the vouchers. So the specific specimens are going to be associated with your checklist, or you could just use the vouchers as evidence to link scientific names to your checklist. So, or both, you can do both. So if I just wanted to add the scientific names and I don't necessarily want voucher specimens associated with my checklist, I could either select all or go through and select which ones I think are appropriate. And then if I go all the way to the bottom, you can say add names without linking vouchers. So that would be just adding Zeltnera muhlenbergii, but not necessarily these two specimens that are associated with that scientific name. So if I click submit vouchers, and then I return to my checklist up here, I'll now see that there are 365 taxa in my checklist because I used the vouchers to tell me what species or which taxa are in that location. And so you can do this multiple times, and you can change your search parameters each time. So if I go back into manage linked vouchers, I could click on this pencil here, then this is where my search statement will be. And I could say, okay, how about let's try Laguna Look. And then I could see if there are any missing taxa here. Nope, that was all fine. Then I could use lat long if I wanted to. I just want to place like a point. Let's just say if there's anything in here. Those terms. See if there's any missing taxa there. Oh, apparently there are a few. So maybe I'll want to add those ones to my Laguna Lake area. For example, this one said Laguna open space, so that makes sense that I didn't catch it the first time. And so you can just incrementally create your list in here. See, now I have 406 taxa. If you want, you can also link vouchers to these specimens using a variety of tools. So I already showed you how to link vouchers for missing taxa. But in this taxa without vouchers, this will show you all the taxa in your list that has some sort of voucher specimen that could be linked to that taxon. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how to link vouchers to your checklist so that we have some time for questions. But I will show you some resources where you can learn more about that. Okay, the other part I did want to tell you about is adding checklists from an existing list. So that's either one by one, or if you just kind of want to add one because you're like, I know that's there, I just need to go collect it. And then also you can create a checklist by uploading a spreadsheet. So if I just wanted to add one thing at a time, then you'll click this Edit Species List button in the top right. So it has SPP. And then a little box will show up that will allow you to add species to the list. So let's just say that I wanted to add, this is probably in here already. Let's just say I found some specific grass, but I haven't put that voucher in my collection yet. Then you can add any sort of habitat, abundance, notes. Source. If you would prefer for a different family to be visible, you know, sometimes the taxonomy in CCH2 isn't necessarily what you want to be using, you know, with the whole Hydrophalaceae, Boraginaceae thing, whatever. You can decide what you want to show up as the family. And then I can click Add Species to List, and it has been added to my list. I'll also show my taxa alphabetically. And there it is. If you wanted to add taxa as a list, then there is a batch upload spreadsheet. And again, to access that, you would go up to this Edit Species List in the top right. And then this box will show up. And then you can click Batch Upload Spreadsheet. So then there will be some really helpful instructions on this page that will tell you what fields you need to upload to. So they need to have these particular names, otherwise it's not going to recognize what information you're trying to give to it. But at minimum, you just need a SciName field. And so you can say, just leave the taxonomy as it is. You can say, you can add family, habitat, abundance, all those things that we previously looked at. Just upload a checklist. And then if there are any errors, they will show up here and say, hey, I couldn't add this taxon for some reason. And it could be because it didn't find that in the taxonomic thesaurus. That's probably the most common issue. And if you find that and you're like, oh, it's not a misspelling, it just appears that maybe this taxon isn't in the thesaurus, feel free to email me or Jason Alexander, and we can put that taxon in the taxonomic thesaurus if need be. Okay, so that was a whirlwind of just some of the things that you can do with checklists or the general creation of checklists. Are there any questions?
I have a question. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie. That's wonderful. What I'm wondering is if you choose, say you want a checklist, can you just pick parts of the voucher that you want to show? Like, could you have a checklist that just showed perhaps a collector's name or a date of collection? Or I guess it would be, or maybe how many specimens you have of each one of those taxa that's on your list. I mean, could you kind of, instead of showing the entire label or, but it might be nice to have a checklist that has little bits of information next to it. Can you do that?
I don't know if you can customize to that level. If we go back to sharing my screen, and let's just associate a voucher. So that would be, I come in here and there's a bunch of specimens. I didn't go over this, but how you can link specific taxa or vouchers is you can go over here and just boop. There are also ways of doing that in batch. And then if we said, show me notes and vouchers, it will just show me the collector and collector number and where it is. So that's the default, and there's not a lot of customization at the moment.
Okay.
Andy asks,
but it looks pretty easy to click on a name of a taxon and just see how many records you have. Say like, that's weird, how many do we have? And it's like 1, or, oh yeah, we've got 50 of those. You know.
Yeah, you might be able to do that. Let's see, view related specimens.
Because there you can see, oh yeah, 3. And it says 3.
And those might not be what are linked. View related specimens, edit details. Oh yeah, you can edit which ones are there, which vouchers are connected. Andy asks, does sign name include authors? I get that confused with scientific name. In the batch uploading, I think you do not include authors. That's a good question. It doesn't say, but I think that you don't.
Yeah, I've gone on forays where it's just really interesting to know how many actual specimens you have of any one thing, you know, any one name from a given area. And then it kind of helps you in collecting. It's like, well, I know I've got 20 of those, but I've only got 1 of this species. Let's try to find it, or stuff like that.
Yeah, you might not be able to
play with that.
You might not be able to get counts, but you can at least get like an idea of like, oh, we have tons from here.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. Are these checklists live in the sense that our herbarium collections are live? I've just noticed all the checklists that are on there that I'm actually actively adding species in some of those checklist areas. And I don't know if I put a voucher into my herbarium in CCH2, whether those checklists will find it periodically and update, or whether the owner has to go in and manually add things periodically.
Yeah, that's a great question. They are not dynamic, so they are only manually curated.
And do you have a sense of how often like they are? I mean, it might be neat to have like the last updated date on those checklists. So if I go to use one, I know how recent it is.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes that is in the details. Like they'll say, here is a checklist that we uploaded from a list from 2019. But I think that depends on whoever is entering the metadata. Any other questions?
It's a neat feature. I actually noticed we just are working on a checklist for one of the UC reserves, and looks like it would be pretty easy for us to just put it on there. So that's neat.
Yeah, we're kind of gathering checklists from other like CMPS chapters and such too, at least the ones who have public checklists, and wanting to put them on there.
I think what you were showing about the different ways, having different search terms for the same little area is going to be pretty important. I've seen that a lot, or just around here, and how things get referred to over time, and also the way, you know, things are abbreviated, and little tweakings of the boundaries. I mean, it would take a lot of thoughtfulness to get a very, very complete, I think, checklist.
Sure.
I think that's very cool.
Yeah, since we have a couple minutes, I'll show you one other neat thing. If I can find another checklist that might have this. So a neat thing about checklists is that you can look for where species in your, or voucher specimens in your checklist may have been re-identified since you created the checklist. So if someone went in and was like, oh no, that's actually a way different grass, then you can actually kind of compare the curation of the specimens with the curation of your checklist. So to do that, you can go up into the manage linked vouchers area. And then, oh, I think this is just is one that was uploaded as a spreadsheet, so they don't have any search terms saved. But you can go to this tab called Voucher Conflicts, and it looks like there's no vouchers associated with this particular checklist. But if there was a specimen that was re-identified to a different species than when you originally created the checklist, it will show you the discrepancy, and then you can say, oh wow, maybe that species isn't in this location at all because that was the only specimen of that taxon. Maybe I can add this additional taxon. So I don't remember what it looks like exactly, but then you can
that's great for those aberrant names that show up and you're like, what?
exactly.
Right. And in either direction, it might be a new name that you're totally unfamiliar with, right? It's like, what is that? Or it could be an old name, or I don't know. That's a great feature, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could be
It
really
could
useful.
be a good reason to have more than one voucher linked to each name if they're available.
True. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mike asks, any plans to sort the taxa by group? For example, monocots are now scattered alphabetical by family only. No, because there is no monocot versus, well, actually there might be, so I might be misspeaking here, but the taxonomic thesaurus is not super robust beyond like family. It's not a beautiful phylogenetic tree. So I don't actually know if some clean monocot, dicot distinctions exist. So there's currently no other work there that I know of, but it could definitely be developed. It might just be tricky depending on what the taxonomic thesaurus actually looks like.
I think I just right on the tail of that comment, because I'm thinking there's a lot of family names that are on those lists that I would just like, oh, it's my checklist. I'm putting them all in Liliaceae. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, so I want to mostly combine things, or just to make it life easy for me. I'll keep it private.
Yeah. And that's why there's the family override, because maybe you don't think that everything is an asparagus. So. All right, well, it looks like we are at about time. Feel free to send me any questions as follow-up. I will be putting this recording on the website with all the others, and I will be putting up a schedule of the new topics in probably a couple of weeks. If you have any recommendations or requests for things you would like to be covered during one of these data portal lunch breaks, also feel free to email me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Katie.